The night was silent, too silent, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath, waiting, watching, for a scandal that would one day shape the lineage of the Messiah. Have you ever wondered how God can take the darkest, most shameful moments and weave them into destiny? Because this story is not gentle, it is not clean, it is not the kind you hear in Sunday school. It is raw, human, messy, and drenched in the mystery of a God who writes straight, with crooked lines. Before we continue, tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments. If videos like this one resonate with you, hit subscribe. Come with me to a desert shadowed by ancient promises, to a family fractured by grief, desire, and silence, to a woman who refused to disappear, and to a man who would face the truth he spent years running from. This is the story of Judah and Tamar. Scandal, shock, a divine setup, and it begins in the quiet. The sun bled slowly over the hills of Canaan, painting the sky with streaks of gold and crimson. The air was dry, heavy, as though it carried secrets older than the stones beneath Judah's feet. A breeze moved through the olive trees, gentle but restless, the kind of wind that whispers, "Something is coming." Judah walked alone that morning. But truly he had been walking alone for years. He had left his father's house with a heart full of confusion, guilt, and a grief he never fully named. The memory of Joseph, his brother, his burden, haunted the back of his mind like a shadow he could never outrun. Some nights he could still hear Joseph's cry echoing inside the pit. Some nights he saw the coat stained with blood that wasn't blood at all. Some nights he wondered if God still watched him, or if God had turned his face away. So Judah tried to build a new life far from home, far from reminders, far from the weight of what he had done. He married a Canaanite woman. He raised sons, Er, then Onan, then little Shelah, whose laughter once softened Judah's hardened spirit. He worked the fields, traded in the markets, lived among people who did not know his story, his failures, or the heaviness buried deep inside him. But even distance cannot silence a restless conscience. Follows like a shadow, quiet, unrelenting. And then there was Tamar. Her name meant palm tree, a symbol of resilience, a symbol of steadfastness. And she embodied both with quiet strength. She entered Judah's household as a hopeful young bride, veiled in innocence, carrying dreams of a loving husband, a family, a place to belong. But the moment she crossed the threshold, she felt the tension in the air. Judah's home was not a place of peace. It held cracks, deep ones, from years of unspoken wounds. Judah's firstborn, was a storm wrapped in human form. Troubled, sharp-edged, a man whose heart turned easily toward darkness. No matter what Tamar did, she could not soften him. She cooked, she served, she honored him. But the more she tried, the colder he became. Some nights, Tamar would sit outside beneath the stars, her hands clasped around her knees, the moonlight catching the quiet tears she refused to cry inside the house. She whispered prayers, not loud, not desperate, just steady. The way someone prays when they believe God sees them, even if no one else does. And God did see her. The scriptures say that was wicked in the sight of the Lord. Not Tamar. Not the quiet girl who tried to make a home where there was no love. And judgment came swiftly. Judah buried his firstborn son with a face carved from stone. Tamar watched him from a distance. One life ended. But the storm had only begun. Because then came the law of Levite marriage, the custom that the brother should give Tamar a child to carry on Er's name. And so Judah gave her Onan. Onan was a man torn between duty and greed. He wanted control. He wanted inheritance. He wanted pleasure without responsibility. He played the part of a husband, but refused the heart of one. He approached Tamar in darkness, but denied her the dignity of motherhood. And God saw this too. Another life ended. Another grave. Another wave of whispers in the camp. And Tamar, innocent, faithful Tamar, stood in the center of a tragedy she did not cause. People began to look at her differently, not with compassion, but suspicion, fear, superstition. Some said she was cursed. Some said death followed her. Some said she carried a dark omen. Judah heard their voices, and slowly, he began to believe them. He looked at Tamar and saw not a daughter-in-law, but a threat. His heart, filled with old guilt, old shadows, old fears, could not handle another loss, so he made a decision that would alter destinies. He sent Tamar away. "Go back to your father's house," he said. Words heavy, cold, final. Tamar did not argue. She bowed her head, gathered what little dignity she had left, and walked away from the home she had tried so desperately to build. Behind her the desert wind rose, as though creation itself protested the injustice. Shelah grew older, old enough to marry. But Judah never called Tamar back. Not once, not ever. 'Cause deep down, Judah feared her. Tamar felt the sting of betrayal, the ache of abandonment, the sharp pain of promises broken by the very man who was supposed to protect her. Days turned into months, months into years, and still nothing. But Tamar was not a woman who disappeared quietly. She was a palm tree, a survivor, rooted, steadfast, and one day, she would stand tall in a way Judah never expected, in a way the world would never forget. The desert wind carried whispers of destiny, whispers of scandal, whispers of a woman who would risk everything to claim what was rightfully hers. Time passed, but time does not heal all wounds. Some wounds grow, some wounds deepen, some wounds wait, until truth demands to be faced. Tamar lived in her father's house, but she did not belong there. Not truly. Not in her heart. Not in her destiny. Every morning she woke to the same silence. A silence filled with questions that clawed at her soul. Why did Judah send her away? Why did he look at her with fear instead of justice? Why did he forget the promise he made? The promise that Shelah would be her husband. Why did he let her carry shame that did not belong to her? Tamar would sit near the window, watching travelers pass by the dusty road, her fingers tightening around the edge of her veil, her breath caught between hope and despair. Would today be the day Judah sent for her? Would today be the day her future was restored? Days passed, weeks passed, years passed. Judah never came. The rumors spread. The whispers grew. The stigma thickened like fog around her. They called her the widow with a curse. The woman who lost 2 husbands. The shadow no man wanted near him. But Tamar's eyes. They were not the eyes of a defeated woman. There was something burning deep within them. Not anger, not bitterness, but a fierce knowing. A conviction that the story was not over. A conviction that destiny was waiting. A conviction that God had not forgotten her. And then a moment. Spark. A turning in the winds of fate. Word reached Tamar that Judah was traveling to Timnah to shear his sheep. A season of celebration, business, and movement. A place where decisions were made. And secrets were hidden. But more importantly, Shelah would be there too. Grown. Man. Old enough to marry. Old enough to fulfill the promise. Yet Judah had never sent for her. Never restored her place. Never kept his word. And Tamar understood something with painful clarity. Judah had no intention of giving her Shelah. He had abandoned her, bound her to a life of waiting, trapped her in a half-existence. He hoped she would simply fade away, disappear, be forgotten. But destiny does not forget. God does not forget. And a woman of resolve does not disappear. Tamar's heart thundered in her chest as the truth settled over her. Judah would not fight for her future, so she would fight for it herself. Courage surged through her veins, the kind of courage that rises only when a person has lost everything and has nothing left to fear. She removed her widow's garments, the black cloth that marked her as cursed, the fabric that clung to her like a shroud, the symbol of a life paused, suspended, denied, and she put on something new. Veil. Not the veil of mourning, but the veil of mystery, the veil of intention, The veil of a woman taking destiny into her own hands. She wrapped it carefully around her face, her fingers trembling not from fear, but from purpose. Then she went to the crossroads, the entrance to a name, a place whose name meant eyes. Fitting, because this would become the place where everything would be seen. She waited there, seated, cloaked in secrecy, shrouded in silence. When Judah approached, he did not recognize her. How could he? He had not looked at her, truly looked at her, in years. He saw only a veiled woman by the road. A woman he assumed was a prostitute. A woman he approached because grief and loneliness had carved a hunger in him, and he sought comfort in the wrong places. Judah asked her, "Let me come in to you." Tamar's heart pounded, but her voice remained calm. "What will you give me?" she asked. Judah offered a young goat, a gift he did not currently possess. So Tamar said, "Give me something as a pledge, until you send it." Judah hesitated. "What pledge shall I give you?" And here was the moment the heavens leaned close. The moment destiny held its breath. Tamar spoke with a steadiness that shook the invisible realms. "Your seal, cord, and the staff in your hand." Judah froze. His seal, his identity. His cord, his authority. His staff, his legacy. These were not ordinary objects. These were the symbols of who he was. The markers of his lineage. The heartbeat of his name. To give them away was more intimate than anything he could do with his body. It was a surrender of self, a revealing, binding, and he gave them, unthinking, unaware, unseeing. Judah entered the tent with Tamar, not knowing she was the woman he had wronged, not knowing she was the daughter-in-law he had abandoned, not knowing he was stepping directly into God's unfolding plan. The night was silent, heavy, timeless. When Judah left, Tamar remained a moment longer, her hand pressed against her heart, her breath unsteady. She had crossed a line that most would never dare approach. A line of scandal, a line of accusation, a line that carried a cost she was fully prepared to pay. Because this was not a woman fighting for pleasure. This was a woman fighting for justice, for destiny, for the promise that had been stolen from her. She returned home quietly. She removed the veil. She put on her widow's garments again. And she waited. Weeks passed, then months, and then the first signs, changes, the quickening. Tamar was with child. Whispers spread like fire across dry thorns. Scandal, accusations. Judah heard. And the man who denied her justice became the man ready to condemn her. "Bring her out," he declared, "and let her be burned." The words sliced through the air like a blade. Cold, unthinking, self-righteous. But Tamar did not tremble. She stood tall, the palm tree unbroken, unbent. She sent a message to Judah. "The man who owns these is the father of my child." And she revealed the seal, cord, the staff. Judah's heart stopped. His breath vanished. The world tilted beneath him. He knew. In an instant, he knew. He whispered the words that changed everything. "She is more righteous than I." The scandal had reached its peak. The truth had shattered the silence. And Tamar's courage had turned the story on its head. But destiny was not done. God was still moving, still weaving, still unfolding a plan far greater than Judah or Tamar could comprehend. Because something sacred was growing within her. Something the world desperately needed. Something the Messiah himself would one day come through. Silence settled over the courtyard like dust. Heavy, unavoidable. Judah stood frozen, staring at the seal, the cord, the staff. His identity lay exposed in Tamar's hands. The very objects he had given in a moment of weakness now glared back at him as undeniable proof. His throat tightened. His heartbeat hammered like a fist against his chest. The faces around him blurred, their murmurs fading into a low, distant roar. It felt as though heaven itself had opened a scroll of his sins and read them aloud. "She is more righteous than I." The words were soft, but they shook the ground beneath him. Judah, the one who once sold his own brother. Judah, the one who carried guilt like a second skin. Judah, the man who hid behind silence, behind distance, behind fear. Judah, the man who had wronged Tamar twice. First by withholding his son, then by condemning her without question. For the first time in years, Judah saw himself clearly, not through pride, not through excuses, but through truth. He saw the man he had become, the choices he had made, the shadows he had allowed to guide him, and he felt the weight, not of punishment, but of conviction. All his life he had run from responsibility, from his family, from his past, from God. But Tamar forced him to stop running. She stood before him not as a victim, but as a mirror, reflecting the parts of himself he had long tried to bury, reflecting the courage he lacked, reflecting a righteousness born not from perfection, but from bold justice. Judah lowered his head. The world seemed to exhale, and for the first time in years he felt something break inside him. Pride, fear, denial. The fracture hurt, but it also healed. Tamar meanwhile stood steady. Her hands were firm, her eyes unwavering, not gloating, not triumphant, just resolute. She had not revealed these objects to shame Judah. She had revealed them to reveal the truth, a truth she had carried alone for too long. Judah's men looked at one another, unsure of what to do. The world they knew, the hierarchy, the assumptions, the judgments had shifted. A woman had stood against the injustice of a man, and heaven had backed her. The fire Judah had ordered was extinguished. The execution halted. The whispers stilled. But inside Judah, a deeper fire began to burn, a fire of repentance. He approached Tamar slowly, each step heavy with regret. When he reached her, he didn't speak. He simply bowed his head, not before a daughter-in-law, not before a widow, but before a woman whose righteousness had revealed God's justice. Tamar watched him. Her gaze softened, not in pity, but in acknowledgement. They both understood what had happened here. They both felt the shift. They both recognized that something sacred had unfolded. Judah stepped back, exhaling shakily. His soul was unraveling. Not in chaos, but in revelation. He had spent years avoiding the truth of what he had done to Joseph. Years avoiding the responsibility he owed his family. Years avoiding the pain that festered inside him. But today, because of Tamar, truth had finally caught him. And truth was mercy, because God does not expose to destroy. He exposes to heal. The crowd dispersed slowly, still murmuring, still shaken by what they had witnessed. Tamar returned to her home. But she did not return defeated. She returned vindicated, restored. Inside her, life stirred. Not one child, 2 twins, a double portion. A sign that God multiplies what humans try to diminish. A sign that destiny often grows in wombs society tries to silence. As her belly grew, so did the tension in the air. Rumors spread. Speculation swirled. Judah kept his distance, not from avoidance, but from humility. He respected Tamar now. He understood the sacredness of what she carried. And Tamar, she felt a strange stillness inside her soul, a peace that rose from the ashes of her suffering. She had fought, and God had honored her fight. She had stood, and heaven had stood with her. She had risked everything, her reputation, her life, her future, and God had not let her fall. In the final months of her pregnancy, Tamar began to dream. Strange dreams, divine dreams, dreams filled with shadows and light, dreams that felt like glimpses of something far beyond her understanding. In one dream she saw a branch, broken, splintered, suddenly bloom with new life. In another, she saw a lion roaring over a cradle. In another, she heard a voice whisper, "The scepter will not depart from Judah." She didn't know what it meant, not yet, but she felt the weight of destiny moving around her. like unseen hands guiding every breath, every heartbeat, every step. Meanwhile, Judah wrestled with his own turning point. He walked alone through the hills at night, the stars burning overhead. He remembered Joseph's cries. He remembered selling his brother for silver. He remembered lying to his father. He remembered hiding from accountability. And now, he remembered Tamar, her courage, her righteousness, her truth. He felt the pieces of his past pulling him back, not to shame him, but to rebuild him. He whispered into the cold night, "God, I see now." The words trembled from his lips, fragile but real. For years he had been blind. Blind to his failures. Blind to his responsibilities. Blind to God's plan. Tamar had opened his eyes. God was not finished. Storm was coming. Birth. A struggle. A moment that would mark the turning point of not just Judah's life, but the lineage of kings. The lineage of the Messiah. And when the time came, nothing, absolutely nothing, would be the same again. The day Tamar went into labor, the heavens felt closer than ever. The sky hung low, heavy with clouds, as though creation itself leaned in to witness what was about to unfold. The wind was restless. The air was charged. Every sound seemed sharper, clearer, alive. Inside the small room where Tamar lay, oil lamps flickered along the walls, casting trembling shadows across her face. Her breaths were deep, strained, rhythmic, the sound of a woman standing on the edge of destiny. The midwives whispered to each other, their voices hushed with awe and worry. Twins were rare. Twins were mysterious. Twins carried symbolism, either blessing or battle, sometimes both. Tamar gripped the cloth beneath her, the pain sharp and consuming, but she did not cry out. She did not break. She had endured years of silence, years of injustice, years of waiting. Compared to that, this pain was purpose. This pain was movement. This pain was holy. As the contractions intensified, Tamar felt something else. Presence. Not in the room, but all around her. A stillness that wrapped around her like warm light. A knowing that she was not alone. She closed her eyes. Saw flashes of her dreams, the roaring lion, the blooming branch, the whisper of a scepter. She didn't understand them fully, but they filled her with strength. "Push," the midwives urged. Tamar obeyed. Cries split the air, the first child. "Boy." He thrust out his hand first, tiny and searching. The midwife gasped. "This one comes first," she said, tying a scarlet thread around his wrist. "This will be the firstborn." But destiny does not follow human order. It follows divine intention. For suddenly, the child with the scarlet thread pulled his hand back in. And the second child, the unexpected one, forced his way out with strength, determination, and mystery. He was born first. The midwives exclaimed, "What a breach you have made for yourself." His name would be Perez, meaning breakthrough. A child who broke the expected. A child who broke the order. A child who broke open a new lineage. Then the second child came forth. The one with the scarlet thread. He was named Zerah, meaning brightness, dawn, light. 2 sons. 2 destinies. 2 symbols. Breakthrough. Light. Tamar held them in her arms, exhausted but glowing with a quiet, fierce joy. The twins rested against her chest, their tiny breaths warm against her skin. She looked at them with tears gathering in her eyes. Not tears of pain, but tears of fulfillment. These were not ordinary children. She felt it. The room felt it. Something ancient, something divine, something unfolding, was wrapped in those small swaddled bodies. Word spread quickly. Judah heard. He entered Tamar's home slowly, shoulders heavy, heart uncertain. He did not know what to expect. He did not know if Tamar would reject him. He did not know if the children would stir his guilt or his healing. But when he stepped inside, everything changed. Tamar looked at him. Their eyes met. Not with accusation. Not with shame. but with understanding. Judah's breath caught. He saw the twins, saw their tiny hands, saw their fragile forms, saw the miracle before him. Something inside him broke again, but not like before. This break was different. This break made room. Room for humility. Room for responsibility. Room for redemption. He knelt beside Tamar, his voice soft. "Tamar, forgive me." The words trembled. They were raw, real. Tamar did not speak for a moment. She studied him. The man who had wronged her, feared her, misjudged her, condemned her. But she also saw the man he was becoming. A man humbled. A man awakened. A man changed. She spoke quietly. "Stand, Judah. We have both walked through fire. Let us walk forward now." Judah inhaled shakily. For the first time in years, he felt peace settle across his shoulders like a mantle. A weight lifted. A wrong made right. A wound beginning to heal. He looked at Perez, the child who pushed through, who refused to be second. And something stirred in Judah's spirit. A whisper. Prophecy. A sense of destiny that he could not explain. Perez. Breakthrough. Judah felt his heart pulse with revelation. This child would change everything. Not just for Tamar. Not just for him. But for generations. He saw flashes in his mind. Crowns, thrones, kings rising from the lineage of this child. He didn't understand it fully, but he felt it deeply. Tamar rested her head back, exhaustion washing over her like a tide. But she was at peace. More at peace than she had ever been. She had fought through shame. She had survived abandonment. She had faced death. And she had prevailed. God had seen her. God had justified her. God had written her into a story far bigger than her pain. Judah looked at her again, not as a burden, not as a curse, not as a mistake, but as a vessel of God's will. The room felt different now. Lighter, fuller, alive. The presence Tamar had felt earlier still lingered. Holy, quiet, powerful. This was not just a birth. This was intervention. Divine intervention. The unseen hand of God reaching into human chaos, human sin, human brokenness, and weaving purpose. The midwives bowed their heads. Judah wiped his eyes. Tamar smiled weakly. Twins slept. In heaven, heaven rejoiced. Because through this broken family, through this scandal, through this unexpected union, God was shaping the lineage of David, the lineage of kings, the lineage of the Messiah. A Savior was coming, and his bloodline had just begun to shimmer in the shadows. The months that followed were unlike anything Judah had ever known. For the first time in years, his heart felt awake, not comfortable, not unscarred, but awake. Every morning, he found himself drawn to Tamar's home, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but out of a quiet, growing reverence. Because in Tamar's presence, he saw the truth of who he could have been, who he still might become. The twins grew quickly. Perez, strong, restless, relentless, the child of breakthrough. Zerah, calm, observant, gentle, carrying a quiet glow in his eyes. Judah watched them as though watching the future unfold. And in many ways, he was. One morning, as the sun spilled pale gold across the village, Judah stood outside Tamar's door. He hesitated, something he would never have done years ago. He had once been a man of decisions, abrupt and unquestioned. But humility changes a man. Pain reshapes him. Truth remakes him. Tamar opened the door, balancing Perez on her hip. The child's dark eyes flicked toward Judah, mirroring Judah's own fire, his own stubbornness, his own lineage. Judah swallowed. "May I?" His voice cracked, unfamiliar. Tamar nodded and handed him the child. Perez gripped Judah's finger instantly. Fierce, unyielding. Judah felt the jolt of that tiny hand like a spark straight into his soul. "Strong," Judah whispered. Tamar smiled softly. "He will break barriers." Judah looked up at her, breath caught. He knew she meant more than physical strength. There was something prophetic in her tone, something ancient, something God-touched. Judah exhaled slowly. "You were right," he said. "About everything." Tamar didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence carried grace. Judah rocked the child gently, staring into the eyes of a future he had almost destroyed. But not anymore. He would not run from family again. He would not choose fear over righteousness. He would not repeat the sins that had haunted him for years. In that moment, Judah made a decision. Quiet, internal, powerful. He would return home. He would face his father. He would face his brothers. He would face the truth about Joseph. Because redemption is not a moment. It is a journey. And Tamar had set his feet back on the path he should have never left. But returning meant something else. Leaving Tamar and the twins behind. Judah struggled with the thought. He didn't want to abandon them. But he also knew Tamar was not alone. God was with her. Her destiny was already unfolding. Her sons were already marked by divine purpose. So Judah prepared to leave. The night before his journey, he sat beneath the stars. The same stars God once showed Abraham. The same stars that symbolized a promise. A promise Judah had nearly severed. A promise God was now weaving back through Tamar. Judah whispered into the wind, "Give me courage." And the wind answered, not in words, but in a strange, gentle warmth that brushed across his skin like a hand. A reassurance. A reminder. He was not walking alone. When morning came, Judah approached Tamar again. He stood at her doorway, hesitant, respectful. "Tamar," he said, "I must return to my family. There are wrongs I must mend. Truth I must face. I want to do right. Not only for them. For you. For the children." Tamar studied him quietly. She saw the change. The humility. The sincerity. She stepped closer. "Judah, go. Do what must be done. Your path is calling." Judah lowered his head. "Will you be well?" She nodded. "God saw me in my sorrow. He will see me in my joy." Judah felt his throat tighten. He bowed to her. Something no man of his position would ever do lightly. Tamar placed her hand on the twins' heads. "Take this with you," she said. "A blessing from my sons." Judah felt it. A warmth, a peace, a covering. Flow over him like a mantle. Perez stared up at him with fierce eyes. Zerah blinked with calm serenity. 2 sons. 2 symbols. 2 promises. Breakthrough. Judah stepped back. "I will return," he whispered. Tamar nodded. "I know." And for the first time in his life, Judah walked away not as a man running from his mistakes, but as a man walking toward redemption. The journey home carved silence around him. The road twisted through hills, deserts, and memories. Memories he had buried. Memories he had locked away. His father's grief. His brother's cries. The blood on the multicolored coat. The lie that shattered Jacob's heart. The guilt that shadowed every decision. Judah's steps grew heavy as he approached his homeland. The fields looked the same. The sky looked the same. But Judah was not the same. He found Jacob sitting beneath a tree, older than Judah remembered, sorrow carved deep into his face. Judah stood quietly, waiting, breathing, gathering the courage Tamar's faith had sparked within him. Jacob looked up. His eyes widened. "Judah, my son." Judah fell to his knees, the weight of years collapsing into the earth. "Father, forgive me." The words cracked the air like thunder. Jacob reached forward, confused, trembling. "What do you speak of, my son?" Judah's breath shook. He did not confess everything that night. Not yet. But the opening had been made. A wound had been exposed. And healing, slow and painful, began to seep in. Judah stayed with his family, worked with his brothers, held his father's hand when grief overwhelmed him, and slowly, patiently, restored what he had broken. But there was still one thing missing. Joseph. The brother he had betrayed. The brother he had abandoned. The brother he believed was long gone. Yet destiny, quiet, mysterious, divine, had been moving in Egypt, shaping a story even Judah could not imagine. And when famine struck, when desperation drove Jacob's sons to seek food in foreign lands, when Judah stood before a powerful Egyptian ruler with piercing eyes, he saw something familiar, a reflection, a resemblance. Joseph, alive, risen, restored. Judah fell to the ground, tears streaming down his face. He confessed everything, every sin, every regret, every burden. Joseph wept with him, not in anger, but in forgiveness. God sent me ahead, Joseph said, to save lives. Judah felt those words pierce through every wall inside him. God had been working all along, even through betrayal, even through sin, even through Tamar's scandal, even through Judah's failure. God had woven salvation through broken people, through unexpected choices, through undeserved grace. Judah returned home carrying more than grain. He carried reconciliation. He carried peace. He carried the beginning of a future only heaven could have designed. Back in Canaan, Tamar raised her sons, unaware that Judah had met Joseph, unaware that her breakthrough child would one day father a line of kings. But she felt it. In the quiet, in the night, in her bones. Perez would rise. His descendants would rise. And from his line, from her line, would come a king unlike any other. A king whose throne would never end. A king who would turn scandal into salvation, shame into glory, brokenness into redemption. Tamar didn't know his name, not yet, but heaven whispered it over her children as they slept. A name that would one day shake nations. A name that would one day heal the world. A name that would one day redeem all things. Years passed, and the land changed with them. The winds grew harsher. The rains grew fewer. The fields began to thin, as though the earth itself were gasping. Whispers drifted between villages, famine spreading like a slow shadow. Tamar watched the horizon every morning. The sky seemed heavier now, burdened by a silence that felt ancient. Even the birds no longer sang as they once did. But inside her home life remained warm. Perez and Zerah grew like two rising flames. One fierce and unpredictable, the other calm and steady. Two sons shaped by a mother's courage, and a destiny neither yet understood. Tamar worked with quiet strength. Every woven basket, every jar of stored grain, every repaired roof tile carried the same prayer. Lord, keep my sons. Guide their steps. Lead them where you will. Sometimes at night, she would sit at her small oil lamp and watch them sleep. Perez sprawled like a warrior ready for battle. Zerah curled like a thinker lost in dreams. She smiled softly. My boys, God has written something in you. But life outside their home was shifting. Merchants traveling through the region brought troubling news. Food was vanishing across nations. People were journeying far into foreign lands to buy grain. Egypt, they said, had more food than any kingdom. Egypt, they said, was ruled by a mysterious governor who seemed to know the future before it unfolded. Tamar listened quietly, her heart stirring. She didn't know why, but something in the merchant's words made her think of Judah. She wondered where he was, whether he had kept his promise to return, whether time had healed the fractures in his family. One evening, as she watched her sons chase each other through the fading light, the memory of Judah's bowed head came back to her. The sincerity in his voice, the promise in his eyes. He had left as a man seeking redemption, and Tamar believed he would find it. Meanwhile, in a distant land Tamar had never seen, Judah stood in the palace of Egypt. Gold pillars framed the hall. Servants moved like shadows. And at the center of it all stood a man Judah once knew only as a dreamer. The brother he had wronged. The brother he had abandoned. Joseph, alive, powerful, unbroken. Judah trembled in the governor's presence. Not because of his authority, but because his past was standing right in front of him. Joseph tested them, weighed them, searched their hearts. And when the final moment came, when Benjamin was threatened, when the chance to run away returned, Judah stepped forward. No hesitation, no fear. "Take me," he said. "Let the boy go free." Joseph's facade shattered. He wept so loudly the palace walls seemed to tremble. "Judah," he whispered. "It is I, Joseph." Judah fell to the ground, overcome. The years of guilt, the sin, the secrets, all of it poured out in broken sobs. But Joseph lifted him up with trembling hands. "What you meant for harm," Joseph said, "God has turned into salvation." Judah returned home changed, not by wealth, not by power, but by forgiveness. And this time he did not delay. He traveled back to Tamar's village, back to the woman whose courage had turned his life toward redemption. When Tamar saw him approaching, she stood still, her breath catching. Judah looked older, the lines on his face deeper, the eyes wiser, the posture humbler. Yet there was a new fire in him, burning steady and sure. "Tamar," he said, stopping before her, "I have come back, as I promised." She studied him quietly. He was different. Not the man who had once wronged her, but a man refined by grace. "And your family?" she asked. Judah smiled, the soft, tired smile of a man who had walked through both fire and mercy. "Healed," he said. "Restored. Because God used you to turn my steps back toward him." Tamar's eyes shimmered, though no tears fell. She had lived long enough to understand that God's ways were not always gentle, but they were always good. Judah stepped forward, looking at Perez and Zerah with pride that was no longer shadowed by shame. "Your sons," he said, "will carry a legacy I could never have imagined, not because of me, but because of the strength of their mother." Tamar exhaled slowly. The wind moved softly through the doorway, brushing past them like a quiet blessing. Judah stayed for a season, helping, guiding, supporting, not as a ruler over her, but as an ally, brother, friend. And though their lives would one day part again, they would always be bound by truth, by courage, by the night Tamar refused to be forgotten by destiny, and the morning Judah stepped into redemption. Years later, when storytellers would speak of their names, they would speak not of scandal, but of lineage, not of disgrace, but of divine design. For the line they carried, the line born from struggle and breakthrough, was marching forward, toward kings, toward covenants, toward a Messiah. Tamar didn't need to understand the full picture. She only needed to raise her sons with the same courage that had brought them into the world. Because someday, far beyond the reach of her lifetime, a king would rise from Perez's line. A king who would bring justice to the broken, hope to the lost, peace to the weary. A king the world had been aching for since Eden. Her story, once whispered with scandal, would be remembered with honor. 'Cause sometimes, God hides the greatest beginnings inside the most unlikely moments. The night was quiet, too quiet. A stillness settled over the land like a heavy cloak. The kind of silence that comes before a revelation. Divine hush. Tamar sat beside the open doorway of her home, an oil lamp flickering softly at her side. Perez and Zerah slept behind her, breathing in gentle rhythms. And outside, the stars shimmered like 1,000 watching eyes. She lifted her gaze to them. The sky was a vast canvas of silver dust and ancient fire. Every star seemed alive, as though it pulsed with secrets whispered from heaven. And in that silence, something shifted, something holy, something eternal. A thought pressed gently into Tamar's spirit. Not a voice, not a vision, but a knowing. You are part of something far greater than you can imagine. She closed her eyes, letting the truth wash over her. Everything she had endured, the pain, the loss, the rejection, the risk, none of it had been wasted. Every step had been woven into a larger tapestry. Every tear had watered the soil of a future she would never see. but her sons would carry. A soft breeze moved through the room, causing the flame of the oil lamp to dance. The shadows on the walls flickered like living silhouettes. And Tamar felt, for the first time in years, a deep anchoring peace. She didn't see the future. She didn't know that kings would rise from her lineage. She didn't know that one day prophets would echo the name of Perez as a root of royalty. She didn't know that a Messiah, the Savior of the world, would trace his earthly line back to her. All she knew was that God sees, God remembers, God restores. Far away, Judah walked under the same starlit sky, reflecting on the twists and turns that had brought him home. His heart felt lighter, his steps steadier. He whispered into the night, "Lord, thank you for not giving up on me." The stars seemed to shimmer in response. Generations rolled forward like waves on the shore. Perez grew into a man of fierce determination. Zerah grew into a man of wisdom and discernment. Their descendants formed tribes, built cities, carried promises. From Perez came Hezron. From Hezron came Ram. From Ram came Nahshon. From Nahshon came Salmon. From Salmon came Boaz, a redeemer of his own generation. A man drawn to another brave woman, Ruth. From Boaz came Obed. From Obed came Jesse. And from Jesse came David, the shepherd king, the giant slayer, the poet warrior, the man after God's own heart. And farther still, through empires and exiles, through battles and blessings, through centuries of waiting, the lineage continued marching toward Bethlehem, toward a manger, toward a star, toward a child whose cry would shake the heavens. Jesus, the Messiah, the Redeemer, the one who would save the world. And woven into his earthly genealogy, etched permanently into the story of salvation, to Tamar, not forgotten, not shamed, not erased, honored. Her courage became part of Christ's lineage. Her resilience became a thread in the world's redemption story. Her name, once whispered with suspicion, became a testament of divine purpose. Because God does not choose the perfect. He chooses the willing. He chooses the brave. He chooses the overlooked. He chooses the broken who refuse to stay broken. Tamar's story whispers across time. When the world shuts its door, God opens a destiny. When people judge your past, God writes your future. When your life feels tangled, God is weaving something eternal. And as the final echo of Tamar's legacy fades into the night, a single truth rises like the dawn. Sometimes God builds the greatest promises on the shoulders of the most unexpected people. Sometimes the Savior of the world comes through a story that once looked like scandal, but was always a miracle. Thank you for journeying through this story. Before you go, take a moment, breathe, and let this truth settle in your heart. God can redeem any story, even the ones we think are ruined beyond repair. If this video touched you, inspired you, or opened your eyes to something new, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach more souls around the world. And I'd love to hear from you, truly. Share your thoughts in the comments. What part spoke to you the most? Your voice matters here.